This is a model that can be used by course designers when making course design decisions. It breaks down what can be very difficult and complex decisions into manageable chunks so that course designers can focus their attention on the elements that are going to have the biggest and most positive influence on the learning outcomes of students. So this model breaks these decisions down in 4 ways. It asks for things that are going to be memorable learning moments in the learning experience. It looks for learning opportunities for students, assumptions that we carry forward about the learners from a design perspective, and then finally the learning barriers, the things that we anticipate are going to get in the way of students. And we're going to plot these sort of factors or these examples for the courses on 2 scales. We're going to plot them on a scale of importance to the learning experience, so low to high, and then we're going to plot them on a scale of influence that we as a course designer or educator have on them, so from low to high. So what I have here are some examples. So let's say that we're developing a course, and let's begin with assumptions that we may have about the learners. So this is a common one. Let's say that our learners have high technology skills. And let's say that we're developing a course where technology is an important skill for them to have. So the importance of this is probably relatively high. However, we have a relatively low influence over the technology skills that students bring into our classes often. So what this might mean is we can plot this on this quadrant of assumptions about learners. But what we also might want to know is we might have to come back to that in order to help students gain technology skills that are going to be needed for the course. So let's go from another perspective of memorable learning moments. So I have another example here. Let's say our course, one of the things that we design that could be a real memorable learning moment for students is for them to go out and have an interview with the professional in their field that they're interested in. So let's look here. So the importance that we may slot this in for our design is going to be quite high, and we really have a high degree of influence over the success of that. Our good planning can come into place, selecting the right professionals in the field and so forth. So again, we can see that that might be a really high element in that quadrant. So now let's look for a moment at learning barriers. So this example can be quite common for some courses, and let's say that students just have a low interest in the concept of theory in a given field. So for example, we might say that this importance to the learning barrier, depending on the course, might be kind of moderate. And really, when it comes down to it, most likely we have a lower influence on this, but what we might be able to do is actually do some things that are going to help influence that interest. So we can do some things that are going to help influence maybe a student's interest in theory. So I'm going to plot that a little on the higher end, but more kind of moderate and moderate. So low interest in theory, we have kind of a moderate influence and a moderate level of importance to the learning environment. And then finally, let's look at an example that might address that learning barrier. And this is learning opportunities. You'll often see that these 2 quadrants can be kind of related, and there's really not a direct sort of correlation between the 2, but they can certainly help us go and tweak our decisions between the elements. So one thing that we might think about is learning opportunity might be to help students connect theory to practical uses. So we might determine, based on what we saw there in learning barriers, that this is quite a high level of importance. And really, we as educators have a high level of influence on this. So we can plot that in the high category for learning opportunities. And so you can start to see how these 2 elements are somewhat related. Now, the important thing to note about this particular model is that it's not an exact science. That this tool is in place really to help people sort of help designers and educators sort of deconstruct some of the complexity that often comes when designing courses, and helps us think through some key questions that we have to confront when we go about designing courses. So again, by breaking it into things like memorable learning moments, learning opportunities, assumptions that we have about learners and the learning barriers that we anticipate, we can begin making good choices about the design decisions that we have to go forward with. So this is a really useful model to use early on in the design process as a way to help clarify some of our ideas and clarify some of the solutions that we're going to have to develop in our design processes.